The pen felt heavier than a loaded gun. Adrian Vale held it between two fingers and stared at the final page of the transfer agreement. Across the polished table, his fiancée smiled. Celeste Marrow wore white. Of course she did. White silk. White diamonds. White gloves hiding the faint crescent marks his nails had left on her wrist the night he caught her deleting messages. She looked like a bride. She smelled like betrayal. "Sign it," she whispered. Her voice was soft enough to fool a priest. Adrian said nothing. The private conference room sat at the highest floor of Vale Dominion Tower. Rain crawled down the glass walls. The entire city glittered beneath them, reduced to lights, traffic, and people too small to matter. This building belonged to Adrian. The company belonged to Adrian. The patents belonged to Adrian. The mansion, the offshore accounts, the private laboratories, the land surrounding the northern harbor, all of it had been built from the ruins of his father's dying empire. Celeste wanted everything, and she had brought witnesses. Her father, Victor Marrow, sat beside her with his hands folded over his stomach. His smile was broad and oily. Celeste's younger brother, Damien, leaned against the window, openly recording the scene with his phone. Adrian's chief financial officer, Martin Crane, stood near the door. His oldest friend, his most trusted advisor, the man who had slept in Adrian's apartment when they were both broke enough to share instant noodles. The man now refusing to meet his eyes. And beside Martin stood a silver-haired attorney named Rourke, who had spent the last hour explaining why surrendering controlling ownership was the only way to save the corporation from an imminent criminal investigation. Fraud, bribery, market manipulation. The charges were endless. Every piece of evidence pointed at Adrian. Every signature looked like his. Every authorization came from his private account. Perfect. Almost beautiful. Celeste reached across the table and touched his hand. "Darling, no one is taking anything from you." Her eyes shone with rehearsed concern. "This is temporary. Father will hold the shares until the investigation ends. Martin will stabilize the board. I will protect the family assets. Once your name is cleared, everything returns to you," Victor chuckled. "Provided your name can be cleared." Damien laughed behind his phone. Adrian looked at each of them. In another life, he had believed every word he had signed. He had surrendered his company, his fortune, and the voting rights attached to every major subsidiary. Then the police had entered. Celeste had screamed. She had clung to his arm. She had begged them not to take him. The performance had been magnificent. She even cried when they handcuffed him. Adrian had spent the next several years in a concrete cell while his empire was carved into pieces. Victor became chairman. Martin became chief executive. Damien purchased sports cars and filled nightclubs with money stolen from Adrian's accounts. Celeste visited the prison twice. The first time, she wore black and claimed she was fighting for him. The second time, she wore Adrian's mother's necklace and told him the truth. She had been sleeping with Martin since before the engagement. The investigation had been their creation. The evidence had been forged. The attorney had been bought. The board had been threatened. Even the prison attack that left Adrian blind in one eye had been arranged by Victor. Celeste had pressed her palm against the glass between them and smiled. "You were always clever," she had said. "You were just never cruel enough." Then she left. Adrian remained. His appeals vanished. Witnesses changed their testimony. Guards ignored the blood beneath his door. Winter entered through cracks in the wall and settled inside his bones. On his final night, a prisoner with a sharpened piece of metal entered his cell. Adrian fought. He broke the man's nose. He tore open his throat with his bare hands. Then another prisoner came. Then another. When the guards finally opened the door, Adrian was lying beneath 3 bodies. His lungs were filling with blood. His last thought was not of justice. It was not of love. It was not of regret. It was a simple calculation. He had trusted 4 people. Therefore, 4 people had to die. Then darkness swallowed him, and the pen returned to his hand. The same pen. The same room. The same white dress. The same rain crawling down the glass. Adrian had awakened less than an hour earlier, seated at the head of the table while Attorney Rourke summarized the transfer documents. At first, he thought death had become a cruel loop. Then he noticed the ache was gone. His eye could see. His ribs were whole. His wrists carried no scars from prison restraints. The date on the agreement belonged to the past. The past before the signature. The past before the police. The past before Celeste had taken everything. Adrian had not gasped. He had not shouted. He had not demanded an explanation from God. He had simply lowered his eyes and continued reading. Every page. Every clause. Every trap. And while they watched him, He remembered how each of them begged at the end of the life they had stolen. Victor had not begged Adrian, not yet. But Adrian had read about his death in an old newspaper passed between prisoners. Victor collapsed during a private banquet after choking on a piece of imported steak. Damien died drunk behind the wheel of Adrian's favorite car. Martin was arrested years later when the empire collapsed beneath the weight of his incompetence. Celeste disappeared before the trial. Her body was never found. That ending had been unsatisfying. This time, Adrian intended to improve it. Celeste squeezed his fingers. "You understand, don't you?" Adrian lifted his gaze. Her smile trembled, only slightly. She had always hated silence. Silence forced liars to hear themselves. He studied her face as though admiring it for the first time. Perfect skin, perfect lips, perfect fear concealed beneath perfect confidence. He smiled. The room exhaled. Victor leaned back. Damien lowered his phone and smirked. There it was, the foolish Adrian. The obedient Adrian. The man who could build an empire but could not imagine betrayal from the woman sharing his bed. "I understand," Adrian said. Celeste's smile widened. "I knew you would." Adrian turned the pen. The metal clicked beneath his thumb. Attorney Rourke pushed the document closer. "Sign above the marked line. Then initial the remaining pages. Once completed, Mr. Marrow will assume temporary stewardship of the voting trust." Temporary. Adrian nearly laughed. He remembered this clause. It transferred not only his voting power but also authority over the trust protecting his personal assets. In his former life, he had discovered the detail too late. This time, he had discovered something else. The pages were not identical to the draft sent to him the previous evening. The footer code had changed. The numbering marks were different. Rourke had replaced the original contract after Adrian's legal department approved it. Sloppy, arrogant, criminal. Exactly what Adrian needed. He placed the pen against the paper. Celeste held her breath. Victor's fingers tightened. Martin stared at the signature line. Adrian drew the first curve of his name. Then the doors burst open. Celeste jolted. Damien nearly dropped his phone. Victor shot to his feet. A squad of armed officers entered the room, followed by two investigators wearing dark coats. The same entrance, the same timing, the same trap. Celeste recovered first. She threw herself toward Adrian. "No!" Her scream pierced the room. "You cannot take him. He has done nothing." "Beautiful." Adrian almost applauded. The lead investigator approached the table. "Adrian Vale, you are under arrest on suspicion of corporate fraud, financial conspiracy, and obstruction." Martin looked devastated. Victor looked furious. Damien kept recording. Celeste clung to Adrian's shoulder and began to cry. Adrian calmly finished the stroke of his pen. Then he lifted it from the page. Celeste froze. The investigator reached for him. Adrian raised one hand. "Before you touch me, I suggest you examine the document on this table." Rourke's face changed. A flicker. A crack. A glimpse of the rat beneath the expensive suit. The lead investigator frowned. "What document?" "The one Attorney Rourke attempted to have me sign after replacing an approved transfer agreement with a forged version." The silence that followed was sharp enough to cut skin. Victor recovered with a roar. "What nonsense is this?" Adrian ignored him. He looked at the investigator. "The original's draft was approved by my independent legal counsel yesterday. It granted limited voting authority during the investigation. The document before me transfers permanent control of my companies and personal trust to Victor Marrow." Rourke stepped forward. "That is false." Adrian smiled. "Then you will have no objection to comparing the digital checksum of this file with the version registered in the corporate archive." Rourke stopped. Sweat appeared at his temple. Celeste released Adrian's shoulder. Only an inch. Only for a second. But Adrian felt it the first retreat. The first instinct of an animal smelling fire. Victor slammed his palm against the table. "This is a distraction. Arrest him." The investigator glanced at the unsigned page. Adrian turned it around. His name was incomplete. A curved line. Nothing more. Not a legal signature. Not a surrender. Celeste stared at it. Her face emptied. Adrian watched realization enter her eyes. He had not signed. The officers had arrived. The evidence was not yet secure. The plan had moved too early. Something was wrong. For the first time in their relationship, Celeste looked at Adrian without pretending. Hatred stared back at him. Cold. Naked, brief. Then the mask returned. "Darling," she whispered, "you are confused." Adrian leaned toward her. "Am I?" Martin finally spoke. "Adrian, perhaps the stress has affected your judgment." His voice carried the same wounded loyalty that had deceived Adrian before. "This agreement was prepared to protect you." Adrian looked at his oldest friend. He remembered Martin standing behind Celeste at the prison visitation center. He remembered the expensive watch on Martin's wrist. His watch. He remembered Celeste turning slightly, revealing bruises on her neck shaped like another man's mouth. Adrian's smile deepened. Then explain why your private authorization key was used to access my encrypted executive account last night. Martin went pale. Damien stopped recording. Victor's eyes narrowed. Celeste did not move at all. The room seemed to shrink around them. Adrian reached inside his jacket. Several officers raised their weapons. He slowly withdrew a small black drive and placed it on the table. This contains mirrored security logs from the executive server, audio captured from the private conference suite, and copies of messages exchanged between Martin Crane, Celeste Marrow, Victor Marrow, Damien Marrow, and attorney Rourke. Rourke backed toward the door. An officer blocked him. Victor barked, fabricated. Perhaps, Adrian said. That is why I delivered identical copies to the federal prosecutor, the Corporate Crime Bureau, and 3 independent journalists before entering this room. Celeste's lips parted. That had not happened in the former life. It could not have happened, because Adrian had not known. But this morning, the moment he understood that he had returned, he had moved. He had no proof from the future. He did not need it. He knew where Martin hid the cloned authorization device. He knew which private account Victor used to pay Rourke. He knew Damien had recorded their planning meetings because the idiot enjoyed replaying Celeste's promises of wealth. He knew the password to Celeste's hidden cloud archive, the name of the hotel where she first betrayed him, the date of their first night together, the lie she had once called romantic. Adrian had entered her account while she slept beside him. He had copied everything, every message, every payment, every photograph, every confession. Their scheme had taken months to build. He had destroyed it before breakfast. The lead investigator picked up the drive. His expression had changed. He was no longer looking at Adrian. He was looking at Celeste. Is there anything on this device we should know about? Celeste's tears returned. Faster this time. Messier, more desperate. I do not know what he has done. He has been paranoid for weeks. He watches me. He accuses me. I think he is having some kind of breakdown. Adrian nodded slowly. A breakdown. He reached beneath the table and pressed a hidden control. The wall display awakened. Celeste appeared on the screen. Not the Celeste in white. Another Celeste. Naked shoulders beneath a hotel sheet. Martin lay beside her. Both were laughing. Victor's voice came through the recording. Once Adrian signs, the police take him. By the time he understands, the shares will be untouchable. Damien's voice followed. And if he refuses? Celeste smiled into the camera. He will sign. Adrian would cut off his own hand before admitting he does not trust me. The living Celeste stared at the recorded Celeste. Her knees weakened. Martin gripped the back of a chair. Victor's face turned purple. Damien whispered a curse. The recording continued. Rourke discussed the forged agreement. Martin described planting evidence. Victor approved payments to officers and witnesses. Celeste laughed about visiting Adrian in prison. I want to see his face when I tell him Martin has been sleeping in his bed. Adrian watched the screen without blinking. The investigators signaled to the officers. Weapons shifted. Positions changed. The trap turned around. Rourke tried to run. He made it 2 steps. An officer drove him into the wall and twisted his arms behind his back. Damien shouted and reached for his phone. Another officer seized him. Victor demanded to speak with the commissioner. No one listened. Martin looked at Adrian, not at the officers, not at the screen. How? One word. Barely alive. Adrian stood. He adjusted his cuffs. Then he walked around the table until he stood before Martin. His oldest friend looked smaller than Adrian remembered. Pathetic, soft, built from borrowed confidence. Adrian leaned close enough that only Martin could hear him. You should have killed me before handing me the knife. Martin's eyes widened. Adrian moved on. Celeste remained beside the table. Her white dress seemed gray beneath the cold light. She searched his face for the man she knew, the man who adored her, the man who forgave every suspicious absence, the man who accepted every lie because love had made doubt feel shameful. She found nothing. Adrian, she said. His name cracked in her throat. He stopped in front of her. She touched his chest. Her hand trembled. This is a misunderstanding. He looked down at her fingers. She pulled them away. We can fix this, she whispered. Send them away. We will talk privately. I will explain everything. Explain Martin? Her mouth opened. Explain the forged evidence? She swallowed. Explain the payments? Her eyes darted toward the officers. Explain why you plan to watch me rot in prison while wearing my mother's necklace. Celeste went still. That detail was not in the recording. Martin stared at him. Victor stopped shouting. Even the officers sensed something they could not understand. Adrian smiled. A quiet smile, a dead man's smile. Celeste stepped back. For the first time, she looked afraid of him. Not afraid of losing wealth, not afraid of prison. Afraid of Adrian. Good. Fear was honest. The lead investigator approached her with restraints. Celeste shook her head. No. Wait, Adrian, tell them. Tell them I am your fiancé. Adrian picked up the pen she had given him. He placed it in her trembling hand. Her fingers closed around it by instinct. You wanted my signature, he said. The restraints snapped around her wrists. I prefer yours. Celeste stared at him. On what? Adrian turned toward the rain-covered windows. Far below, police vehicles surrounded the tower. Cameras gathered at the entrance. Reporters were already arriving. The Marrow family name was beginning its descent into filth. Your confession, he said. Behind him, Celeste screamed his name. Adrian did not turn. He watched lightning split the sky above the city he still owned. In his former life, betrayal had taught him one lesson. Mercy was not virtue. Mercy was an unlocked door. This time, every door would close. Every witness would speak. Every hidden account would burn. Every accomplice would crawl. Celeste had handed him a pen to sign away his empire. He had handed her the first key to a prison cell, and this was only the beginning. Celeste did not stop screaming until the elevator doors closed. Her voice followed Adrian through the steel. His name, her promises, then silence. The elevator descended. Adrian stood alone inside it, watching his reflection in the dark glass. The man staring back wore a charcoal suit, a silver tie, and the calm expression of someone leaving a business lunch. There was no rage on his face, no triumph, no grief. Only calculation. The first blow had landed. That was all. His enemies had not yet lost everything. They had merely discovered that the floor beneath them was not solid. Adrian intended to let them fall slowly. The elevator opened into the private executive garage. His security chief waited beside a black sedan. Elias Vane had served Adrian's father before serving him. Thick shoulders, scarred hands, gray at the temples. A man who trusted evidence before loyalty and loyalty before comfort. In Adrian's former life, Elias had died 3 days after the arrest, a supposed robbery. A bullet through the chest. The police called it random. Adrian had learned the truth in prison. Elias had discovered that Martin ordered the security logs altered. He tried to deliver the original records to a prosecutor. Damien's men intercepted him. This time, Elias was alive. That alone made the air feel different. The building is secure, Elias said. The officers removed the Marrows, Crane and Rourke through the east entrance. Reporters are gathering outside. Good. Your board is demanding an emergency meeting. Let them demand. Elias opened the rear door. Adrian did not enter. Where is the package? Elias reached inside the car and removed a sealed black case. Adrian checked the lock, untouched. Inside were original server drives, copied financial ledgers, private correspondence, and several documents that could destroy men far more powerful than Victor Marrow. The conspiracy against Adrian had not belonged to one family. Victor was merely a broker. Martin was merely a traitor. Celeste was merely bait. Behind them stood bankers, politicians, regulators, and competitors who wanted Vale Dominion divided before its newest technology entered production. Adrian had remembered fragments from his former life. Names whispered by prisoners, executives who rose after his fall, companies that purchased his assets for absurdly low prices, judges who rejected his appeals, a prosecutor who retired 6 months later and bought an estate overlooking the sea. The pattern was clear now. His destruction had been an auction. Everyone had placed a bid. Take this to the Northern Archive, Adrian said. Use no company vehicles. Speak to no one. Trust no badge unless I personally confirm the name. Elias studied him. You expected this. I expected betrayal. From all of them? From more than them. Elias accepted the case. His face hardened. What do you want me to do after the delivery? Disappear for 2 days. I do not run. You are not running. You are becoming bait they cannot find. Elias gave a humorless smile. And when they come looking, let them. Adrian entered the car. Before the door closed, Elias asked one final question. Miss Marrow. Adrian looked at him. What about her? She will claim coercion, emotional abuse, manipulation. She will say the recordings were altered. I know. She may gain sympathy. I know. Elias waited. Adrian leaned back against the leather seat. That is why I am going to help her. The door closed. The sedan moved into the rain. By evening, Celeste's face covered every screen in the city. She was not shown in restraints. Her attorneys made sure of that. Instead, they released an old engagement photograph. Celeste wore pale blue and looked at Adrian, as though he had placed the stars in her hands. The caption beneath the image called her a frightened young woman trapped by a controlling billionaire. Her statement appeared shortly after sunset. She claimed Adrian monitored her private communications. She claimed he threatened her family. She claimed Martin had been helping her escape an abusive relationship. She claimed the hotel recording was a staged role play created under pressure. She claimed the financial transfers were ordinary consulting payments. She claimed the agreement had been designed to protect employees from Adrian's instability. Then she cried outside the courthouse. Victor shouted about corruption. Damien accused the police of assault. Martin said nothing. Rourke vanished behind a wall of attorneys. The public divided immediately. Some called Celeste a monster. Others called Adrian dangerous. Commentators examined his silence. Psychologists who had never met him discussed his childhood. Former employees accepted money to describe him as cold. Anonymous sources claimed he had violent tendencies. A photograph of a broken glass from a company retreat became evidence of rage. A canceled dinner became evidence of control. A gift became evidence of manipulation. A prenuptial agreement became evidence of financial cruelty. Celeste performed weakness with the precision of an actress who had rehearsed for years. Adrian watched from his penthouse. He sat before a wall of screens while rain covered the city below. His attorney, Mara Thorne, stood beside the fireplace. She was younger than Rourke, sharper than Martin, and incapable of hiding contempt. In the former life, Adrian had dismissed her after Celeste called her jealous. Mara had warned him about irregularities in the Marrow accounts. He chose love. Love rewarded him with a prison floor. Now Mara placed a tablet on the table. They are requesting release under supervision, she said. The Marrows claim the arrests were politically motivated. Celeste's team is pushing the abuse narrative hard. Will it work? For her, perhaps. She has no prior record. She is wealthy. She is photogenic. Half the city wants to protect her. Let them. Mara frowned. Adrian poured tea. You want her released. I want all of them released. That is a terrible legal strategy. It is not a legal strategy. What is it? A feeding strategy. Mara looked at him for a long moment. Then she understood enough to stop objecting. The prosecution has sufficient evidence to keep Rourke and Martin restricted, she said. Victor may be harder. Damien's involvement appears smaller. Appearances matter. Give them a victory. Mara's eyes narrowed. Adrian slid a folder toward her. Inside was a proposed concession. Vale Dominion would not oppose temporary release. Adrian would publicly state that he trusted the investigation and wished no unnecessary hardship upon the Marrow family. He would allow Celeste access to her personal residence. He would permit Victor to retain temporary control of a minor investment fund. He would even suspend civil proceedings until the criminal review advanced. Mara read the pages twice. You are giving them room to move, yes. They may flee. No, they may destroy evidence. I hope they try. They may contact their partners. I am counting on it. Mara closed the folder. You have changed. Adrian lifted his cup. No, I have become accurate. By midnight, the concession reached the court. By morning, Celeste walked free. She emerged wearing a cream coat and carrying a handkerchief. Her wrists were hidden. Her face was pale. Her lawyers surrounded her. She stopped before the cameras and lowered her eyes. I still love Adrian, she said. The reporters surged forward. Celeste's voice broke perfectly. I believe fear has changed him. I pray he finds peace. I will not answer hatred with hatred. Across the city, strangers praised her grace. Adrian watched the broadcast without sound. Mara stood behind him. She is good. She was always good. You sound almost impressed. I admire useful tools. She thinks your concession means weakness. It must. Victor left custody soon after. He raised a fist for the cameras and declared that the Marrow family would never kneel. Damien posted a message promising revenge. Martin secured release under strict monitoring. Rourke remained detained. The others did not care. They assumed the lawyer would stay silent to protect himself. That was their first mistake. Their second was returning to Victor's estate. The mansion stood behind iron gates and old cedar trees. Adrian had spent holidays there. He had proposed to Celeste beside its frozen lake. Now every room listened. The surveillance system had been installed years earlier by Vale Dominion Security. Victor believed he had replaced it. He had replaced the visible cameras. He had not replaced the emergency fire sensors. He had not examined the antique clock in the west drawing room. He had never noticed that Damien's gaming console maintained a permanent link to a remote diagnostic server. He did not know Adrian held the administrator key. That afternoon, Victor gathered the family and Martin around a long oak table. Celeste entered last. The moment the doors closed, her weakness disappeared. She threw her handbag across the room. You told me he was blind. Martin flinched. Victor poured whiskey. He was. He knew everything. He discovered something. He knew about the hotel. He knew about the account. He knew what I said about visiting him in prison. Martin looked up sharply. What? Celeste turned toward him. He asked why I planned to wear his mother's necklace when I visited him in prison. The room went silent. Damien laughed nervously. That was a joke. No, Celeste said. That conversation happened once. Here, no phones. No staff. Victor drank coincidence. Celeste stared at him. You did not see his face. I saw a man bluffing. I saw a man looking at corpses. Martin moved toward the window. Rain struck the glass. He had access to my authorization key. Then you were careless, Victor said. I was not. You were sleeping with his fiancée in his hotels. That was your daughter's idea. Celeste slapped him. The sound cracked across the room. Martin slowly turned back. His cheek reddened. Something ugly entered his eyes. Adrian watched from the Northern Archive. The feed appeared on a secure monitor. Beside it sat rows of servers humming in darkness. This was the hidden spine of his new empire. A facility no Marrow knew existed. Built beneath an abandoned hydroelectric station, the archive stored more than backups. It contained prototype hardware, encrypted models, unregistered patents, and the unfinished core of Vale Dominion's most valuable project, the Devouring Engine. To the board, it was a failed data compression system. To Martin, it was worthless. To Adrian, it was the golden blade buried beneath his feet. The engine could absorb corrupted databases, fragmented market records, abandoned code libraries, and damaged predictive models. It stripped them apart, identified useful patterns, and rebuilt them into stronger systems. In the former life, Vale Dominion sold the project for almost nothing. Years later, another company transformed it into the foundation of an automated financial empire. Adrian remembered the headlines. He remembered reading them through prison bars. Now the engine belonged only to him. He had spent the hours before the arrests isolating its core. He removed it from corporate oversight. He transferred development to Shell Laboratories. He fed it every market record he legally possessed. Then he fed it the stolen architecture used by his enemies to manipulate Vale Dominion's shares. The engine learned. It consumed. It sharpened. Across one wall, projections unfolded. Shipping disruptions, commodity movements, hidden debt exposure, political donations, currency pressure, corporate weakness. The system mapped human greed as though it were weather. Adrian watched potential profit expand with every cycle. A modest private reserve became a larger position before noon. That position multiplied after a currency swing. The gains moved into distressed shipping contracts. Those contracts converted into control over storage facilities. The facilities became leverage over food distribution. The leverage purchased silence, loyalty, and access. Money flowed through layers of legal entities, no wild gambling, no reckless bets. Each move was cold, measured, predatory. By sunset, Adrian controlled enough warehouse capacity to influence several regional supply chains. By midnight, he owned debt tied to 2 rival corporations. Before dawn, the engine identified a buried weakness inside Victor's investment fund, the fund Adrian had generously allowed him to keep. Its value depended on a medical manufacturing company preparing to announce a breakthrough. Victor believed the announcement would triple the fund. Martin believed the information was secret. Celeste believed the fund was their escape route. They were all correct. They simply did not know the breakthrough was poison. The company's clinical records had been altered. Its product failed stability testing. Its executives hid patient deaths. The regulatory approval would collapse the moment the original laboratory files surfaced. Adrian possessed those files. He had found them inside the conspiracy's payment network. Victor's fund had not been preserved out of mercy. It had been placed above a grave. Adrian leaned toward the monitor. In Victor's drawing room, the argument continued. Damien demanded money. Martin demanded a secure route out of the country. Victor demanded discipline. Celeste said little. She stood near the fireplace, watching everyone, thinking. She had always been most dangerous when silent. Finally, she spoke. Adrian wants us frightened, Victor snorted. He wants us divided. Martin touched his bruised cheek. He already succeeded. Celeste ignored him. He could have opposed our release. He did not. He could have frozen every account. He left the fund untouched. He could have buried us under civil suits. He suspended them. Victor lowered his glass. Damien frowned. Martin looked at her. Celeste's lips slowly curved. He is bluffing. Adrian almost smiled. There she was. The woman he remembered. Arrogance dressed as insight. He revealed everything he had, Celeste continued. Now he wants us to imagine more. The fund is our advantage. Once the medical announcement happens, we will have enough money to fight him. Victor nodded. Martin remained uncertain. What if the fund is bait? Celeste turned toward him. Then do not take your share. Martin said nothing. Damien laughed. Victor poured another drink. The fear in the room began to fade. Greed replaced it. Adrian watched them gather around the poisoned cup. He did not need to force their hands. He only needed to step back. The engine chimed. Another layer of the conspiracy had been uncovered. A list of shell companies appeared. Judicial payments, media contracts, private security retainers. At the center sat a name Adrian had never seen, Lucien Voss. A financier without photographs, a man hidden behind trusts, intermediaries, and dead corporations. The true architect, the one who financed Adrian's fall. The one who intended to acquire the devouring engine after Vale Dominion collapsed. Adrian studied the name. Then he opened a new file. The hunt had widened. Above him, turbines groaned beneath the mountain. Around him, servers devoured oceans of information. On the monitor, Celeste raised a glass. To surviving Adrian Vale. Victor raised his own. Damien grinned. Martin hesitated, then joined them. Adrian muted the feed. He looked at the poisoned fund, at the hidden medical deaths, at the vast fortune his enemies were preparing to pour into their own destruction. Then he lifted his cup of cold tea. To signing everything away, he murmured. Not his empire. Not his freedom. Not his life, their future. Their names. Their last chance to escape. And they were signing with both hands. The first stone in Adrian's new empire was not gold. It was hunger. Not the hunger of the poor. Not the hunger of the desperate. The hunger of powerful men who believed they deserved more than the world had given them. That hunger was endless. That hunger was predictable. That hunger could be purchased. Adrian stood beneath the mountain while the devouring engine mapped the weak arteries of the city. Food, medicine, fuel, credit, information, fear. Every empire depended on those 6 things. Every king pretended otherwise. He began with storage. The warehouses he had acquired through distressed debt sat along the eastern freight corridor. Their owners believed they had escaped bankruptcy by accepting anonymous rescue capital. They had not escaped. They had changed masters. Adrian replaced no one at first. That was important. Frightened workers whispered. Managers waited for mass dismissals. Executives prepared excuses. Adrian did nothing. He studied them. He learned who stole, who lied, who protected their teams, who sold information, who obeyed rules only when watched. Then he summoned the senior staff to the largest warehouse before dawn. The building was cold enough to turn breath white. Rows of workers stood between steel shelves. Adrian walked through them without guards. Elias followed several steps behind. A regional director named Nolan Kreis approached with a nervous smile. Nolan had spent years draining money through false maintenance contracts. He owned a villa, 3 secret apartments, and a collection of watches purchased with stolen wages. He expected negotiation. Welcome, Mr. Vale, Nolan said. We are honored by your visit. I assure you that the operation is stable. Adrian stopped. Is it completely? A section of lights died. Darkness swallowed half the warehouse. Workers murmured. Nolan glanced upward. Adrian looked toward a rusted support beam. Your reports show that the electrical system was replaced last winter. Nolan's smile weakened. It was. Your invoices show premium copper wiring. Yes. The walls contain aluminum scrap. Nolan said nothing. Adrian continued walking. He passed a refrigeration unit. Its alarm flashed. Your reports show complete refrigeration maintenance. Yes. The compressors are failing. We have minor issues. Your reports show no spoilage. Correct. Adrian opened a side door. The stench struck first. Rotten meat, black fruit, mold, boxes of medicine ruined by heat. Workers covered their mouths. Nolan turned pale. Adrian looked at him. How much did you steal? I do not know what you mean. Wrong answer. Elias stepped forward. Nolan raised both hands. This is a misunderstanding. Adrian smiled, the same calm smile Celeste had learned to fear. Then you will enjoy explaining it to the workers whose pensions you emptied. The warehouse doors opened. Investigators entered, not police. Private auditors, attorneys, insurance officers, and several workers carrying copies of Nolan's hidden accounts. Nolan's knees weakened. Adrian had not come to dismiss him. He had come to display him. The workers watched their director collapse. They watched him beg. They watched him blame his assistants. They watched him offer names, passwords, and properties. Adrian listened without emotion. When Nolan finished, Adrian turned to the employees. No speeches, he said. No promises. Silence gathered around him. The stolen funds returned to payroll. Damaged equipment is replaced. Anyone who falsified records leaves with him. Anyone who reported these crimes and was ignored receives authority. A woman near the rear stared at him. Her name was Mira Soren. She managed night inventory. Nolan had buried her complaints for years. Adrian pointed toward her. You warned them 7 times. Mira's eyes widened. Yes, you will run this wildly. She is a clerk. Adrian looked at him. You were a director. The laughter died. That morning, every worker in the corridor heard what happened. By afternoon, Adrian received reports from the other warehouses. Names, evidence, sabotage, bribes. The corrupt began exposing one another before he even arrived. Fear cleaned faster than policy. Loyalty grew where fear stopped. Adrian did not ask for devotion. He paid on time. He protected useful people. He crushed anyone who stole from the structure. That was enough. Within days, the warehouses became precise machines. Spoilage fell. Delivery times shortened. Black market losses disappeared. Inventory moved under a new tracking system built by the devouring engine. Each box became visible. Each delay became traceable. Each dishonest hand left a mark. The system had once been mocked as a failed compression tool. Now it predicted shortages before merchants sensed them. It redirected medicine before hospitals ran dry. It purchased grain before storms closed ports. It acquired fuel contracts before prices shifted. Profit followed, not gradually, violently. Money multiplied beneath layers of silence. Adrian moved those gains into land, transport fleets, energy storage, and private communication networks. He bought failing assets that arrogant men considered worthless. Rail spurs beside abandoned factories, old pumping stations, empty data centers, water rights buried inside forgotten municipal agreements. A fleet of refrigerated trucks owned by a company weeks from collapse. Each piece looked small. Together they formed a closed fist of the city's throat. Mara entered the Northern Archive, carrying a stack of sealed contracts. She stopped before the central display. The map had changed. Lines of light spread across the region. Railroads, clinics, power reserves, secure towers, emergency shelters. Every node answered to Adrian. This is no longer a defensive network, she said. No, it is a state. States require flags. Mara placed the contracts beside him. These are the final acquisitions. The sellers still believe separate buyers are involved. They are. They all lead to you. Eventually, she studied the map. You are preparing for something. Adrian said nothing. In his former life, the medical scandal surrounding Victor's fund had not remained a simple market collapse. The failed product triggered mass panic. Patients died. Hospitals faced shortages after the manufacturer's facilities were seized. Competitors hoarded supply. Transport unions struck. Several cities descended into riots. Vale Dominion, already broken, had been unable to respond. Adrian remembered television screens inside the prison dining hall. People fighting over medicine. Ambulances trapped behind burning vehicles. Politicians blaming one another. He remembered thinking that the world outside his cell looked almost as rotten as the world within it. This time, he would not merely survive the crisis. He would own the solution. Disaster is coming, Mara said. Yes, when? Adrian looked at the map. Bad enough to reveal everyone. Mara did not ask how he knew. She had learned that Adrian answered only useful questions. Instead, she opened another file. You requested candidates with technical ability, no loyalty to the current board, and strong reasons to hate the Marrow family. How many? 5. No digits, Adrian murmured coldly. Say it. Mara's brow lifted. 5. Adrian's gaze sharpened. She corrected herself. Several. He accepted the file. The first candidate was John Mercer, a systems architect dismissed after Martin stole his work. The second was Lena Orr, a pharmaceutical analyst whose sister had died during the hidden trials. The third was Tomas Wren, a logistic commander forced into retirement after refusing Victor's bribe. The fourth was Ilya Voss. Adrian stopped. The surname sat on the page like a blade. Relation? None that I can prove, Mara said. Young researcher. Orphaned. Brilliant. Rejected by every major laboratory after exposing manipulated research. Adrian opened the photograph. Ilya had dark eyes and an expression stripped of expectation. Not broken. Compressed. Dangerous. The final candidate was Sarah Wynne, a former combat medic who now ran an illegal clinic beneath the Southern Rail District. She steals medicine, Mara said. From whom? Distributors who destroy surplus to preserve prices. Then she reallocates medicine. She also broke the jaw of a Vale security officer. Why? He attempted to confiscate insulin from a child. Adrian closed the file. Bring them all. The meeting took place beneath the mountain. None of them knew where they were. Elias transported them separately. Their phones remained above ground. Their eyes were covered until they entered the central chamber. When the blindfolds came off, the devouring engine glowed behind Adrian like a black sun. Jun stared at the servers. Lena stared at Adrian. Tomas studied the exits. Ilya studied everyone. Sarah folded her arms. "You kidnapped us," she said. "I invited you. With armed men, you might have refused. I still might." Adrian slid several files across the table. Each candidate received a different one. Jun found evidence proving Martin had stolen his architecture. Lena found the original clinical records connected to her sister's death. Tomas found bank transfers linking Victor to the officials who destroyed his career. Ilya found a list of laboratories sharing manipulated data. Sarah found warehouse inventories showing where destroyed medicine had been hidden. Their expressions changed. Not with gratitude, with hunger. Adrian recognized it. Not greed. More dangerous than greed. More useful. "You can release these records," Lena said. "Yes, you can destroy them. Yes, you can blackmail everyone involved. Yes." Sarah leaned over the table. "What do you want?" "Competence." "That is not an answer. It is the only answer that matters." Adrian walked toward the map. "A crisis is approaching. The people responsible believe they will profit from it. They have already chosen who will suffer." He looked back. "I intend to choose differently." Jun gave a bitter laugh. "You want us to believe you are saving the city?" "No." The laugh stopped. "I am protecting what will belong to me." Silence. No heroic lie. No shining promise. No speech about justice. Adrian gave them truth sharpened into a weapon. "You will be paid more than your former employers paid you. You will receive authority matching your ability. Betrayal will be answered without mercy. Success will be rewarded without limit." Tomas watched him carefully. "And morality? Keep your own and yours?" "Not available." Sarah smiled first, small, crooked. "Interested." Lena opened the clinical file again. "When do we begin now?" They became the first circle. Not friends, not family. Adrian had died from confusing those words with loyalty. They became instruments with names. Sharp instruments. Jun rebuilt the engine's interface and turned its predictions into operational commands. Lena designed a pharmaceutical verification network that could detect falsified trials before regulators finished reading summaries. Tomas transformed scattered transport assets into a disciplined emergency fleet. Sarah expanded her underground clinic into a chain of hidden treatment centers. Ilya entered the engine's deepest architecture and found patterns even Adrian had missed. The so-called useless skill evolved. The devouring engine no longer merely consumed data. It consumed systems. Every broken institution it studied became a blueprint for something stronger. Every enemy method became fuel. Every attack improved its defenses. Adrian fed it fraud. It created detection. He fed it shortages. It created distribution. He fed it propaganda. It mapped influence. He fed it financial manipulation. It built traps. The engine became less like a tool, more like a kingdom without walls. Around it, the mountain changed. Concrete corridors became command centers. Empty chambers became laboratories. Old tunnels became secured vaults. Hydroelectric turbines powered independent grids. Water purification systems filled underground reservoirs. Medical stores grew. Food reserves expanded. Vehicles waited in hidden garages. Every luxury above ground had a purpose below it. Adrian's private residence became a fortress, not a vulgar palace, a machine for survival. Its glass could resist gunfire. Its ventilation sealed against contamination. Its communications network operated beyond public infrastructure. Its wine cellar concealed an elevator leading into a hardened operations chamber. Mara saw it and shook her head. "You built a throne beneath a home. A throne is decorative." "A lock. For what?" Adrian looked toward the city. "For the cage." While his empire hardened, the Marrows celebrated. Victor's medical investment surged. News of the breakthrough spread through financial circles. Analysts praised the company. Politicians praised innovation. Celeste appeared at charity events wearing white again. She spoke about healing, forgiveness, female courage. The public embraced her return. She became the tragic fiancée who refused to hate the man who wronged her. Interviewers wept with her. Luxury brands sent gifts. Supporters gathered outside Victor's estate. Damien sold private information to journalists and bought another car. Martin began moving money through offshore routes. He also began sleeping in a separate room from Celeste. Adrian watched their fracture widen. The hidden feed captured every insult, every accusation, every moment of fear concealed beneath champagne. Victor poured more money into the fund. Damien borrowed against his future share. Celeste convinced wealthy supporters to join. Martin hesitated. Then greed defeated caution. He invested everything he had stolen. The poisoned cup overflowed. At a private banquet, Victor stood beneath crystal lights and announced that the Marrow family had survived Adrian's attack. Applause thundered. Celeste raised her glass. Damien shouted Adrian's name and laughed. Martin smiled because everyone else smiled. None of them saw the laboratory courier enter a government building across the city. None of them saw Lena's verified files reach independent regulators. None of them saw Sarah's clinics receive emergency stock. None of them saw Tomas's trucks reposition before dawn. None of them saw June activate the distribution grid. None of them saw Ilya uncover a second poison hidden beneath the first. The failed medicine was not merely unstable. Its contaminated production line could spread a lethal infection through hospitals using compromised batches. The coming disaster was larger than Adrian remembered. Much larger. The engine projected the consequences: markets collapsing, hospitals sealing doors, supply chains breaking, crowds rioting, the Marrow Fund evaporating, Lucian Voss moving to seize the ruins. Adrian stood before the projection, while his inner circle gathered behind him. Fear entered the room, not his. What do we do? Jun asked. Adrian watched the city pulse across the map, his city, his cage, his future throne. Nothing publicly. Lena stared at him. People will die. Some already have. We have to warn them. We will. When? When every liar has placed his hand on the blade. Sarah stepped closer. And then? Adrian's smile was colder than the mountain. Then we pull. Far away, Celeste lifted another glass beneath warm golden light. She believed she had escaped. Victor believed he had won. Damien believed wealth made him untouchable. Martin believed he could still choose a side. Above them, the storm gathered without thunder. Below the earth, Adrian's empire opened its eyes. The disaster began with a whisper. A nurse collapsed inside a private recovery ward. Then another. Then 3 patients began coughing blood into their oxygen masks. Within minutes, alarms screamed through the hospital. Within an hour, the ward doors were sealed. Within a day, the same symptoms appeared in clinics across the city: fever, bleeding, convulsions, organ failure. The contaminated medicine had entered the bloodstream of thousands. Doctors searched for an explanation. Executives issued denials. Regulators demanded patience. The company behind the miracle treatment released a statement claiming the cases were unrelated. Then Lena released the laboratory records. Every hidden death, every failed stability test, every altered result, every executive signature. The documents spread like fire through dry grass. News channels abandoned Celeste's charity interview before she finished speaking. Her face vanished from the screen. A red warning replaced it: medical fraud, contaminated production, emergency hospital closures, possible mass exposure. Celeste sat beneath studio lights while producers shouted behind the cameras. The host removed his microphone and hurried away. Her publicist stared at a phone that would not stop vibrating. Celeste stood. What happened? No one answered. She grabbed the publicist by the arm. What happened? The woman turned the screen toward her. Victor's fund had collapsed, not fallen, collapsed. Its value disappeared so quickly that the market systems briefly displayed errors. Investors rushed to sell. There were no buyers. Banks froze related accounts. Creditors demanded repayment. The medical company's executives vanished. Several were intercepted at airports. Others destroyed files. One jumped from the roof of a laboratory. After reporters surrounded the entrance. Celeste stared at the screen. Her lips moved without sound. Everything she had rebuilt after the arrest was inside that fund. Her legal reserves, her borrowed capital, the money contributed by her supporters. The emergency accounts Martin promised were secure. All of it, gone. Her publicist stepped back. You told us the investment was safe. Celeste looked at her. The woman's face twisted with disgust. My parents invested. Listen to me. My parents gave you their retirement savings. This was not my fault. The publicist slapped her. The sound silenced the studio. Celeste's head turned. A thin red line appeared beneath her cheekbone. No one rushed to defend her. No one called security. The crew watched, some with anger, some with pleasure, some already recording. Celeste slowly raised a hand to her face. The publicist began to cry. You knew. I did not. You knew. I did not. The woman lunged again. 2 staff members restrained her. Celeste stumbled backward. Her white dress caught on a lighting cable. The fabric tore. For one absurd moment, she stood beneath the hot lamps with silk hanging from her waist and hatred closing around her from every direction. Then the studio screens changed again. Victor appeared outside the Marrow estate. He was screaming at reporters. His shirt collar hung open. His hair was disordered. He denied everything. He called the collapse temporary. He called the evidence fabricated. He called Adrian a terrorist. Behind him, investors shook the gates. Some held signs, others held stones. A window shattered. Victor flinched. The crowd roared. Celeste watched her father retreat into the mansion. The broadcast cut to hospitals. People crowded emergency entrances. Families begged for treatment. Ambulances sat trapped between abandoned vehicles. Doctors shouted that supplies were running out. Then the first riot began. A rumor spread that a warehouse contained uncontaminated medicine. Hundreds rushed toward it. The warehouse belonged to a distributor linked to the failed manufacturer. Its guards panicked. Someone fired. The crowd surged. Doors collapsed. Shelves overturned. Boxes were crushed underfoot. People fought over useless stock. The building caught fire before sunset. Smoke covered the eastern district. The city government ordered calm. No one listened. Pharmacies closed. Fuel stations emptied. Food deliveries stopped. Drivers abandoned their routes after mobs attacked two transport convoys. Hospitals sealed themselves behind police lines. The infection moved through compromised batches. Fear moved faster. Every hidden weakness became visible at once. Damien learned of the collapse while racing through downtown in a stolen sports car. He had left the estate after Victor refused to give him money. The streets were blocked. People hammered on his windows when they recognized him. They knew his face from social media. They knew he had celebrated the medical company. They knew he had mocked frightened investors. "Move," he screamed. The crowd pressed closer. A man swung a metal bar at the windshield. Glass cracked. Damien reversed into another vehicle. The crowd roared. He accelerated onto the pavement. People scattered. A woman fell. Damien did not stop. He drove through market stalls, clipped a streetlight, and tore the side from the car. The engine screamed. Smoke entered the cabin. He kept driving. Then the road disappeared beneath the wheels. A section of unfinished construction opened before him. He struck the barrier. The car spun. Metal folded. Airbags exploded. Damien woke upside down with blood filling one eye. His phone lay beyond reach. Outside, footsteps approached. Not rescuers. Investors. People whose money he had taken. People whose relatives were dying. They surrounded the wreck. Damien began to cry. "I did not know." A hand reached through the broken window. He screamed. At the Marrow estate, Victor barricaded the doors. Servants fled through the rear gardens. Security guards demanded payment. Victor promised them money after the market reopened. They laughed. One removed his uniform jacket. Another emptied the liquor cabinet. A third opened the gate and walked away. The crowd entered minutes later. Victor stood at the top of the staircase with a hunting rifle. His hands shook. "This is private property." A stone struck the wall beside him. "This family built this city." Another stone shattered a chandelier. Victor fired into the ceiling. Dust fell. The crowd stopped. For a heartbeat, he believed he had regained control. Then someone shouted the name of a dead child. The people surged forward. Victor fired again. The rifle misfired. He looked down. Hands seized his legs. He fell against the stairs. His face struck marble. The crowd dragged him downward. Portraits of Marrow ancestors watched from the walls. Victor clawed at the carpet. "Celeste!" No one came. Martin was already running. He had prepared an escape route. A private aircraft waited beyond the western airport. A forged passport sat inside his coat. Several accounts remained hidden under false names. He believed Adrian did not know about them. That belief lasted until the airport gate rejected him. Martin tried another entrance, locked. He called the pilot. No answer. He called the banker managing his offshore accounts. The number had been disconnected. He opened the secure application. Every balance displayed nothing. Not frozen. A message appeared. "You should have killed me before handing me the knife." Martin dropped the phone. People rushed around him carrying bags and children. Emergency sirens echoed beyond the terminal. He stared at the message. Adrian knew. Adrian had always known. Martin ran toward the parking structure. A black vehicle waited near the exit. Its door opened. For one hopeful second, he believed one of his contacts had arrived. Elias stepped out. Martin stopped. Elias looked exactly as he had before the supposed robbery. Alive. Patient. Martin backed away. "You are dead." "No, I heard you were dead. You paid to make it happen." Martin turned to run. Two men blocked the stairwell. Elias approached. Martin raised his hands. "We can make a deal." Elias said nothing. "I have information." Silence. "Adrian needs me." Elias stopped close enough for Martin to smell rain on his coat. Adrian needed a friend. Martin's face collapsed. Elias took his arm and led him toward the vehicle. Martin did not resist. He had nowhere left to run. Across the city, the government's emergency systems failed. Phone networks overloaded. Power stations shut down after workers abandoned their posts. Water pressure fell in several districts. Police lines broke. The infection continued spreading through hospitals. The city began to starve before night fully arrived. Then Adrian moved. The devouring engine activated the network beneath the panic. Warehouses opened under armed protection. Tomas's fleets rolled from hidden depots. Every truck carried verified medicine, water, and food. Routes changed constantly as the engine predicted riots before they formed. Sarah's clinics lit up across the southern districts. Jun restored communication through Adrian's private towers. Lena released treatment protocols to every physician with access to a working screen. Emergency generators awakened. Water stations opened. Shelters sealed contaminated air outside. The system did not ask permission. It replaced failure. Citizens who had spent the day cursing Adrian's name watched his symbol appear on supply vehicles. A black crown inside a silver circle. The mark spread through smoke and sirens. His people reached hospitals before government convoys. His drones mapped fires. His security teams cleared roads. His doctors separated infected patients from the terrified healthy. His distribution centers issued supplies through verified identity records, preventing hoarding and resale. People tried to rush the lines. Adrian's guards did not plead. They did not negotiate. They restored order. A man pulled a knife near a medicine station. Sarah broke his wrist and continued treating children. A gang attempted to seize a fuel convoy. Tomas trapped them between empty vehicles and disarmed them without losing a truck. A corrupt official demanded control of the eastern warehouse. Mira handed him a communication device. Adrian's voice came through. "You abandoned your district." The official looked around. Cameras watched him. Workers watched him. Hungry families watched him. "I was coordinating a response. You were fleeing. You have no authority. Then leave my food." The official looked at the supplies, at the armed convoy, at the crowd. His courage died. He stepped aside. By midnight, the city had split into two worlds. Outside Adrian's network, chaos. Inside it, light. Food, water, medicine, order. The difference was so complete that people began walking for hours toward his controlled districts. The government asked Adrian to place his assets under emergency command. He refused. The mayor threatened seizure. Adrian released footage of the mayor boarding a private helicopter with crates of medical supplies. The helicopter never lifted. Citizens surrounded it. The mayor resigned before dawn. The board of Vale Dominion called an emergency broadcast. They blamed Adrian for acting without approval. Adrian responded by releasing records showing that several directors had profited from the contaminated manufacturer. Their broadcast ended in silence. One director attempted suicide. Another begged for protective custody. The rest disappeared. Celeste saw all of it from the back of a transport van. She had fled the studio beneath a borrowed coat. Her driver abandoned her after hearing that his brother had died in one of the trials. She wandered through streets filled with smoke until men wearing Adrian's insignia found her. For one moment, she believed he had sent them to rescue her. She smiled. The guards searched her. They removed her phone. They placed her inside the van with other detainees linked to the medical fraud. No one spoke to her. At a checkpoint, Celeste looked through the narrow window. Adrian stood in the center of the avenue. Rain fell around him. Black vehicles formed a line behind him. Doctors moved supplies under floodlights. Crowds gathered beyond the barriers. He wore no armor. No ceremonial coat. Only the same charcoal suit from the conference room. He seemed untouched by the city's collapse. A government commander shouted at him. "You cannot control the entire emergency zone." Adrian looked toward the burning skyline, then toward the screens displaying his network. "I already do." A roar came from the northern district. Something enormous struck the hospital barricade. An infected transport vehicle had crashed through the outer line. Its rear doors burst open. Patients poured into the street. Their skin was blackened by internal bleeding. Their minds were gone. They attacked anything that moved. Panic broke through the crowd. Soldiers raised weapons. Doctors froze. The commander screamed conflicting orders. Adrian did not move. The devouring engine had predicted the breach. Tomas's vehicles closed both ends of the avenue. Sarah's containment team lowered shields. Jun cut the district lights. Darkness swallowed the attackers. Then narrow beams illuminated only their bodies. Adrian raised one hand. A sonic pulse struck the avenue. The infected collapsed at once. Not dead, disabled. The weapon targeted the damaged neural pattern caused by the contaminated compound. A useless frequency model had become a blade no one else possessed. The entire street fell silent. Soldiers stared, doctors stared, civilians stared. The government commander slowly lowered his weapon. Adrian had ended the nightmare with one gesture. The crowd began whispering his name, then chanting it, quietly at first, Adrian. Adrian. The sound grew. It rolled between buildings. It reached the transport van. Celeste pressed her face to the window. She saw people kneeling near the supply lines. She saw officials stepping aside. She saw armed units waiting for Adrian's command. She saw the man she had once called weak standing above a city that had rejected every other master. Her breath fogged the glass. No, she whispered. Adrian turned. Across the distance, through rain, smoke, barriers, and blackened glass, his eyes found hers. Celeste recoiled. He should not have been able to see her, but he did. He lifted one hand. Not to wave. The van doors locked. The vehicle moved toward the underground detention center. Celeste began pounding on the walls. Adrian, no one answered. Adrian, listen to me. The chanting outside grew louder. She screamed until her voice broke. Adrian watched the van disappear. Behind him, the city bowed to necessity. Before him, the first gate of the prison opened. The prison beneath Adrian's estate had no windows. No clocks, no mirrors. Time entered only through footsteps. Celeste counted them. The guards passed her cell at regular intervals. Heavy boots. Calm breathing. No conversation. She tried measuring the silence between each patrol. She lost count. Then she began again. At first, she demanded an attorney, then a physician, then a private room, then Adrian. No one answered. Her cell was clean. That made it worse. There were no rats to fear, no stains to blame, no chains to dramatize. Only a narrow bed, a metal basin, a gray blanket, and a wall, polished smooth enough to offer no place for her fingernails. The room did not punish her. It ignored her. Celeste had never understood how painful that could be. She had spent her life becoming impossible to ignore. A beautiful child, a grieving daughter, a devoted fiancée, a wounded woman, a charitable survivor. Every face had been a key. Every tear had opened a door. Now she cried until her throat swelled. The door remained closed. Somewhere beyond the wall, Damien screamed. Celeste sat upright. The sound came again. Not pain. Panic. Get away from me, metal struck metal. Do you know who I am? A guard said something too low to hear. Then came a dull impact. Silence followed. Celeste rushed to her door. Damien, no answer. Damien. A slot opened. A tray entered. Water bread. A small bowl of soup. The slot closed. Celeste stared at the food. She was not hungry. Her stomach cramped anyway. She kicked the tray. Soup splashed across the floor. A guard's voice came through the door. That was your meal. I want Adrian. Silence. Tell him I will speak. Silence. Tell him I will confess. The footsteps moved away. Celeste pressed her forehead against the door. I will give him everything. Her voice became smaller. Please. Across the corridor, Victor heard her. He laughed. The laugh was dry and broken. Now you beg. Celeste turned toward the wall. Father, your brilliant plan. His voice came through a ventilation grate. You said he was weak. You approved everything. You seduced him. You financed it. You were supposed to control him. You chose Martin. You chose Adrian. Victor coughed. The sound dragged through his chest. Do not speak to me like that. Celeste closed her eyes. Even here, even stripped of money, guards, servants, and applause, Victor still believed volume could become power. Where is Martin? She asked. Somewhere below us. How do you know? I heard him crying. Celeste said nothing. Victor began laughing again. He always was soft. You trusted him. I trusted his greed. You trusted mine, too. That was my mistake. Celeste stepped back from the wall. Something inside her shifted. Not guilt, not grief. Recognition. They were already eating one another, exactly as Adrian intended. She sat on the bed and looked at the untouched bread. No, not untouched. The soup soaked its edge. She picked it up. A few days earlier, she would have thrown it at a servant for being stale. Now she ate every crumb. The door opened hours later. Celeste stood so quickly that dizziness struck her. Two guards entered. Where are you taking me? No answer. They placed restraints around her wrists. She did not resist. The corridor beyond the cell was long and pale. Doors lined both walls. From one came Victor's curses. From another came Damien's sobbing. Farther down, someone whispered Adrian's name over and over. Martin. Celeste's feet slowed. A guard pulled her forward. They passed a glass chamber. Attorney Rourke sat inside, wearing a prison uniform. His silver hair hung across his face. He held a pen. Stacks of paper surrounded him. Confessions. Depositions. Payments. Every secret he had sold for money was now being purchased with hope. He saw Celeste. His hand froze. She stared at him. Rourke looked down and continued writing. The guards brought Celeste to an elevator. It rose in silence. When the doors opened, warm light touched her face. She smelled cedar. Wine rained, the restraints came off. Before her stood a dining room. A long table stretched beneath a chandelier. Tall windows revealed the city. The fires were gone. Supply convoys moved through ordered streets. Power had returned to the districts under Adrian's control. Beyond the river, darkness still covered neighborhoods that had rejected his terms. The city had not recovered. It had reorganized around him. Adrian sat at the end of the table. A glass of red wine rested near his hand. He wore black. No tie, no visible weapon. He looked rested. Celeste touched her tangled hair. She suddenly understood why the guards had not given her a mirror. They wanted this contrast. Her bare feet, her wrinkled detention clothes, her swollen eyes. His quiet luxury, his perfect control. Adrian. He lifted the glass. Not in greeting, he tasted the wine. Celeste took a step forward. The guards remained behind her. I knew you would see me. Adrian looked through the glass toward the city. She forced a smile. We need to talk. We are talking. His voice was calm. That calmness frightened her more than anger would have. Celeste approached the table. I made mistakes. Adrian said nothing. Terrible mistakes. Silence. I was manipulated. He looked at her then. Celeste felt hope. Foolish. By whom? He asked. My father. A door opened behind her. Victor was dragged into the room. His face was bruised. One eye had swollen shut. His expensive suit had been replaced by the same gray clothing Celeste wore. He saw her and bared his teeth. You snake. Celeste stepped back. Victor lunged. The guards drove him to his knees. You blame me? He shouted. You planned the affair. You chose Martin. You said Adrian would sign anything. Celeste looked at Adrian. He threatened me. Victor roared with laughter. I gave you everything. You used me. You begged to be used. Enough, Celeste screamed. The room obeyed. Not because of her. Because Adrian lifted one finger. The silence returned. He took another sip of wine. Continue, he said. Celeste's breath shook. She looked at Victor, then back at Adrian. My father pushed me toward you. He said the marriage would save our family. He said I had no choice. Adrian tilted his head. No choice. I was afraid. You were always afraid, Victor spat. Afraid of being poor. Afraid of becoming ordinary. Celeste's face twisted. Adrian reached toward the table. A speaker awakened. Her own voice filled the room, warm, amused. He will sign. Adrian would cut off his own hand before admitting he does not trust me. Celeste went pale. The recording continued. Her laughter. Martin's breathing. Victor's approval. Then another recording played. Celeste speaking inside the hotel suite. When he is in prison, I want his mother's necklace. It will look beautiful at the visitation. Adrian stopped the audio. Celeste stared at him. He remembered. Not just the evidence. Not just the plan. The future. Some impossible part of her finally accepted it. You knew before it happened. Adrian rotated the wineglass. Yes, how? He did not answer. Victor looked between them. What is she talking about? Celeste ignored him. You knew I would visit you. Yes. You knew what I would say. Yes. Her legs weakened. She gripped the table. Did we already do this? Adrian smiled. That was the only answer she received. Victor began shouting again. The guards removed him. He fought until the door closed. Celeste stood alone before Adrian. Her mind fractured around possibilities too terrible to hold. A life where they had succeeded. A prison. A visit. A murder. She saw herself wearing his mother's necklace. Saw herself smiling through glass. Saw Adrian dying with her name buried beneath his hatred. The room seemed colder. What happened to you? She whispered. You. Celeste covered her mouth. For one instant, real horror entered her face. Then instinct smothered it. She moved around the table. The guards stepped forward. Adrian lifted his hand. They stopped. Celeste came close enough to touch him. She did not. I loved you. Adrian looked at her. She began to cry. Not the polished tears of a courthouse performance. These were ugly, desperate. Her mouth trembled. Her breathing broke. I did love you. You loved what opened when you smiled. No, my accounts. No, my name. No, my obedience. Celeste shook her head. There were moments. Adrian's eyes remained empty. She dropped to her knees. The movement surprised even her. Celeste Marrow had knelt only for cameras, ceremonies, and carefully chosen photographs. Now her knees struck the floor hard enough to hurt. She welcomed the pain. Pain might make the scene real. Please, Adrian drank. I will testify. You already will. I will give you my father. He has given himself. Martin, he has given you Damien. He has given everyone. Celeste swallowed. I will disappear. No. I will leave the country. No. I will never speak your name again. Adrian set down the glass. You misunderstand. She looked up. You are not bargaining for freedom. Her lips parted. You are bargaining for the manner in which you lose it. Celeste crawled closer. A guard shifted. Adrian did not move. She placed both hands against his shoe. Her tears fell onto the polished leather. I am your fiancé. The words were barely audible. Adrian looked down at her. Once those words would have stopped his heart. Once, he would have burned cities to protect the woman kneeling before him. Now he remembered a prison visitation chamber. He remembered her palm against the glass. He remembered her smile. You were always clever, she had said. You were just never cruel enough. Adrian leaned forward. Celeste lifted her face. He spoke her words exactly. You were always clever. Her expression shattered. You were just never cruel enough. She began shaking. No, you told me that through prison glass. No, you wore my mother's necklace. Stop. You laughed when I asked whether any part of us had been real. Stop, you said my weakness disgusted you. Celeste pressed her hands over her ears. Stop. Adrian sat back. The guards seized her arms. She screamed and tried to hold his chair. Her nails scraped wood. Adrian, please! He lifted the wine glass again. No forgiveness, he said. She froze, no rescue. Her face became vacant. No door left unlocked. The guards dragged her away. Celeste twisted toward him. I can change. Adrian watched the wine move inside his glass. So can a sentence. The door closed on her scream. Martin entered next. He did not need to be forced to kneel. He fell before reaching the table. His face was hollow. His hands shook uncontrollably. Adrian. No response. I was jealous. Adrian waited. Martin's voice broke. Talent. Money. Respect. Her Adrian looked at him. Martin began crawling forward. I spent my whole life behind you. You chose that position. I wanted one thing that was yours. You wanted all of it. Martin bowed until his forehead touched the floor. I will work for you. Adrian almost laughed. I know the company. I know the board. I know Lucian's people. At the name, Adrian's eyes sharpened. Martin saw it. Hope returned. I can help you find him. You already have. The wall display awakened. Messages appeared. Locations. Contacts. Every secret Martin had intended to trade was already mapped. The devouring engine had consumed him before he entered the room. His hope died. Adrian lifted the pen Celeste had once handed him. He placed it on the table. Martin stared at it. Sign. Your confession. Martin crawled to the chair. His fingers could barely hold the pen. He signed. Page after page. Fraud. Attempted murder. Witness tampering. The attack on Elias. The plan to kill Adrian in prison. When he finished, Adrian examined the final signature. Martin waited. Will you protect me? Yes. Martin began sobbing with relief. Thank you. Adrian handed the confession to Mara. Protect him from suicide. Martin's relief vanished. What? You will live long enough to testify. No. You will watch every person you betrayed describe you as the architect. No. You will hear Celeste say you forced her. Martin lunged. The guards crushed him against the table. You cannot do this. Adrian looked at him. You did. They dragged Martin away. Damien came next. He entered limping. One arm rested in a sling. Dried blood darkened the edge of his hair. His arrogance had vanished. He looked younger, smaller. He saw the food on the table and stared at it. Adrian noticed. A guard placed bread before him. Damien grabbed it. He ate without chewing. Crumbs fell from his mouth. Adrian watched quietly. When the bread was gone, Damien licked his fingers. Then shame reached him. He lowered his hands. Can I have more? No. Damien's eyes filled. I am injured. You ran over a woman. It was an accident. You accelerated. They were attacking me. You laughed when Martin described men attacking me in prison. Damien began shaking his head. I did not mean it. You recorded it. I record everything. I know. The wall display showed Damien's private archive. Videos of the conspiracy. Parties. Threats. The wrecked lives he treated as entertainment. His face collapsed. Adrian had everything. Damien dropped to his knees. I am stupid. Yes. I followed them. Yes. I never wanted you dead. A recording played. Damien's voice echoed through the room. Make sure the prisoners ruin his face first. Celeste should see what is left. Damien vomited onto the floor. The guards pulled him back. He cried for his sister, then his father, then his mother dead for years. Adrian gave him nothing. Victor came last. He refused to kneel. Even bruised, starving, and stripped of authority, he entered with his chin raised. He looked at Adrian's wine, at the city, at the guards, at the black crown displayed on every screen. You think this makes you a king? No. Victor smiled through cracked lips. Good, because men like you never keep power. Men like me builders. Victor stepped closer. You build. Men like me take. Adrian rested one hand beside the pen. That philosophy brought you here. This is not over. It is. Lucian will crush you. Adrian's expression did not change. Victor realized too late that he had said too much. Adrian smiled. Thank you. Victor's face tightened. The guards seized him. He struggled. You need me. No, I can reach Voss. You just did. Victor looked toward the dark window. A light blinked on a distant tower. Then another. Then dozens. The communication trace was already moving through the network. Every emergency signal Victor's hidden implant had transmitted since entering the room was being followed. Lucian Voss had been waiting for his distress call. Adrian had been waiting longer. Victor stopped fighting. For the first time, despair entered him completely. His shoulders bent. His mouth opened. No command came out. Adrian lifted the pen. Victor stared at it. Celeste had handed Adrian that pen to steal his life. Now it had signed Martin's confession. Soon it would sign Damien's, then Victor's. Then the warrants, seizures, and sentences that would bury the Marrow name. Adrian placed it before him. Sign everything away. Victor looked at the pages. His properties, his remaining accounts, his testimony, his admission of guilt, his cooperation against Lucian Voss. Adrian lifted his wine. The guards turned Victor toward the doors. Wait. Adrian drank. Victor's voice cracked. Wait, the guards continued. I will sign. Adrian did not look at him. Victor fell to his knees. I will sign. The room became still. Adrian finally turned. Victor crawled toward the table. His pride left pieces of itself across the floor. He took the pen. His hand shook. Celeste had once watched Adrian begin a signature with hidden joy. Now Adrian watched her father finish one with open despair. When it was done, Victor released the pen. What happens to us? Adrian looked toward the city. The emergency lights shone like a crown beneath the rain. Celeste will spend her life hearing doors lock. Victor closed his eyes. Martin will live beneath the protection of men who hate traitors. Victor's breath trembled. Damien will learn how slowly an empty stomach measures time. Victor stared at the floor. And me? Adrian finished his wine. You will watch your family blame you until none of you remember whom you betrayed first. Victor began to cry. Quietly, almost respectfully. The guards removed him. Adrian remained alone. Mara collected the signed pages. Elias entered from the corridor. Voss took the signal, he said. Location? He knows Victor was used. He knows now. Adrian rose. Below the estate, his enemies returned to separate cells. Celeste called Martin a coward. Martin called Victor a butcher. Victor cursed Damien for recording everything. Damien begged all of them for food. Their voices traveled through the vents. They tore apart every false bond they had once used against Adrian. No one comforted anyone. No one accepted blame. No one found forgiveness. Weeks later, the public trials began. The evidence was overwhelming. The confessions were complete. The recordings became infamous. Celeste's supporters vanished. Her brands erased her face. Her charities denied knowing her. The people who had praised her grace now studied her courtroom tears and laughed. Martin testified until his voice failed. Victor named politicians, bankers, and killers. Damien's archive destroyed careers across the country. Rourke signed until his fingers cramped. Their sentences stretched beyond hope. Years passed. Victor died first, not at a banquet, not with imported wine. He died alone in a prison infirmary after Celeste refused his final call. Damien followed after a fight over bread. Martin survived the longest. Each year he wrote Adrian a letter. Each letter contained the same sentence, I am sorry. Adrian never opened them. Celeste remained. Age took the beauty she once used as a weapon. Isolation took the certainty beneath it. She began telling guards that Adrian would come, then that he had forgiven her, then that they were still engaged. On her final night, she asked for a pen. The guard gave her one. Celeste held it for hours, no paper, no contract. Nothing left to sign. She died before morning with the pen trapped between her fingers. Far above the city, Adrian stood before a wall of glass. Lucian Voss remained somewhere beyond the horizon. A larger war waited. The devouring engine continued turning. His empire continued growing. Behind him rested the pen, clean, silent, ordinary. Mara asked whether he wished to keep it. Adrian looked down at the streets beneath his throne. Throw it away. She did. The pen fell into the fire. Adrian watched it burn without emotion. People spoke of karma as though the universe kept records. It did not. The universe had no courtroom, no mercy, no memory. Betrayal returned only when someone survived long enough to carry it back. Adrian had survived. That was their judgment. That was their hell, and he had signed every page.